الحضور الكريم، أسعد الله مساءكم بكل خير. قبل أكثر من عقد من الزمان انطلقت فعالياته، جمع على الدوام أصحاب الرؤى والمبدعين عبر العالم، وعلى مدى 11 عاماً احتفى بهم وسلط الضوء على إبداعاتهم. إنه مهرجان الجزيرة الدولي للأفلام التسجيلية. آفاق هو شعار المهرجان، ولكن لماذا آفاق؟ لأنه وكما اعتدنا عليه يعطي الفرصة لفتح آفاق جديدة بل وكبيرة أمام المبدعين من هواة ومحترفين، مخرجين ومنتجين. السادة الحضور، سعادة الشيخ حمد بن ثامر الثاني رئيس مجلس إدارة شبكة الجزيرة، أرحب بكم جميعاً باسم إدارة المهرجان في هذا العرس الإبداعي، وأدعو سعادة الشيخ حمد بن ثامر الثاني لافتتاح المهرجان من خلال كلمته، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحضور الكريم، أود أن أرحب بكم جميعاً ضيوفاً ومشاركين، ونحن نحتفل بافتتاح النسخة 11 من مهرجان الجزيرة الدولي للأفلام التسجيلية. فأهلاً وسهلاً بكم جميعاً على أرض قطر. إن لقاءنا هذا اليوم له سمة خاصة، فهذه السنة هي فاتحة العقد الثاني في عمر هذا المهرجان، وبقدر سعادتنا بما تحقق في العقد الأول فإننا نتطلع إلى القادم ونأمل أن يكون بإذن الله أكثر وأفضل. لذلك جاء المهرجان تحت شعار آفاق، فقد رأينا التنوع الفريد في التجارب الإنسانية التي رصدتها أفلام المهرجان عبر السنوات الماضية، ورأينا كيف عكست المساهمات في كل مرة تطلعاتنا وتطلعات الجمهور العربي في تعميق فهمنا للإنسان، ومن ثم فهم العالم الذي نعيش فيه، وتلك هي مهمة الفيلم الناجح. في موسمه 11 هذا سينطلق بنا المهرجان نحو آفاق أرحب، يكون قوامها الحوار المثمر ومد الجسور والتواصل والتفاعل بين الأمم وفنونها وحضاراتها، وستجدون ذلك واضحاً في المساهمات التي جاءت من كل أنحاء العالم لتحكي للإنسان هنا قصة الإنسان هناك، عبر مضامين متنوعة ومتكاملة فيما بينها، وعبر التعبير القصصي والدرامي الجميل، على أن غايتنا الأساسية هي بلوغ ذلك التفاعل الفكري والحضاري الذي يربط الأمم بعضها ببعض ويؤدي إلى التآخي والسلام والازدهار. وبهذا نعلن بعون الله افتتاح المهرجان في نسختها الجديدة. وفي الختام أود أن أرحب بكم جميعا مرة أخرى، متمنين لكم متابعة ممتعة ومفيدة لفقرات المهرجان وإقامة طيبة في قطر، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
نشكر سعادة الشيخ حمد بن ثامر الثاني رئيس مجلس إدارة شبكة الجزيرة، وبكلمته نعلن افتتاح المهرجان. يتميز مهرجان الجزيرة الدولي للأفلام التسجيلية بحجم المشاركة فيه، فقد أصبح قبلة لصناع الأفلام وهدفاً لكل صاحب رسالة فنية. في نسخة هذا العام يشارك 174 فيلماً من أصل 920 فيلماً تقدمت للاشتراك في المسابقة، تنوعت ما بين القصيرة والمتوسطة والطويلة. تميز المهرجان أيضاً وكما هو الحال هذا العام بمسابقة أفق جديد، والتي تعطي الفرصة للهواة والمتدربين لإخراج باكورة أعمالهم للنور. حضورنا الكريم في ظل النجاحات المتتالية التي حققتها دورات متتالية لمهرجان الجزيرة الدولي للأفلام التسجيلية في استقطاب مشاركة واسعة من الدول العربية والغربية. ها هو اليوم وفي عيده 11 يواصل النجاح من خلال ازدياد اهتمام صناع الإبداع للمشاركة فيه من دول مختلفة. 90 بلداً تقدمت للمشاركة، لكن الأفلام التي تم اختيارها وفقاً للمعايير العالمية اقتصرت على 50 بلداً فقط. كانت هذه البلدان حريصة على المشاركة في نسخ ماضية، وروح المنافسة لم تغب عنها في نسخة هذا العام. المنافسة على المشاركة في المهرجان دفعت دولاً وبلداناً لم تشارك في مسابقات سابقة للمشاركة هذه المرة. نرحب جميعاً بمشاركة غينيا بيساو، الرأس الأخضر، وجامايكا. وقد حرصت إدارة المهرجان على الدوام على توخي الدقة في الاختيار. ليس هذا فحسب، بل إنها حرصت على استقلالية التحكيم. الفيصل هنا للمعايير الفنية فقط لا غير، فلجنة التحكيم تمثل فقط الرؤية الدقيقة والمحترفة، وتراعي المهنية والحرفية العالية في صناعة هذا الفن الراقي. أسماء لامعة من المتخصصين في صناعة الأفلام من 15 بلداً. الآن نعلن عن فيلم الافتتاح الذي تدور أحداثه حول قوة محتلة وشعب أعزل، لكنها ليست قصة حرب بين دولتين ولا قصة حرب بين جيشين. الفيلم يروي قصة الاضطهاد الذي يمارس ضد الشعب الفلسطيني. إنه فيلم قسمة لمخرج وصانع أفلام مستقل يميل إلى تقديم الوجه الآخر لأي قضية، سواء كانت دينية أو سياسية أو ثقافية. الفيلم فيلم قسمة للمخرج تون كراينفينجر من هولندا.
Quite often people think there's an Israel and there's a Palestine and they're at war and we need to help them make peace. But that's not the reality. Israel and Palestine is the same place. It's one country. It's not at war. You don't have two armies fighting each other. In fact, there's never been a Palestinian army. I don't think there's ever been a Palestinian tank or an F-16. So it's not two nations at war that need help bringing about peace. It's a regime of oppression and colonization that needs to be transformed into a democracy with equal rights.
4:30 in the morning. The gates of the checkpoint near the village of Taipei open. Hundreds of Palestinians from the occupied West Bank have been standing in line for hours to go to work in Israel. They all have a special permit, but passing the checkpoint is a humiliating and intimidating experience, day after day.
Ze hebben toestemming precies om 1 zakje met minimaal eten mee te nemen. Andere dingen volkomen niet. Komen in groepen van, ik schat 40, 50 mensen door draaihekken. Worden gecontroleerd door zo'n elektrische machine. Moeten ze soms hun schoenen uittrekken. Ze krijgen minder dan het minimumloon. Ze worden niet betaald volgens de Israëlische wetgeving. Dat is het erge. Een treurige situatie.
Annelien Kish is one of the 500 volunteers from Maxom Watch, an organization that oversees the checkpoints and reports excesses. The members are all women from the heart of Israeli society. Their motivation is a deep disgust and shame for what the Israeli occupation over the years has brought about among the Palestinian population.
Hier hangt een leuk bord dat ik verschrikkelijk vind. Daar staat op the hope of ons allen of zoiets. De hoop van ze met een mooie bloem. Daar zijn afschuwelijke associaties bij. En dat heeft inderdaad, diezelfde associatie heeft iemand ook al uitgesproken en erop geschreven. Arbeid macht vrij.
The Israeli occupation and the construction of more and more so-called Jewish settlements in the occupied territories are wrong and unsellable. That is the opinion of not only Maxom Watch, but the entire international community, which considers the West Bank, along with Gaza, as the territory of a sovereign Palestinian state. Although Jewish history has not been easy, no history can be used as an excuse to do injustice to others. The chosen people must still behave decently. Therefore, the ladies of Maxom Watch keep a close eye on Taipei checkpoint. They describe the situation and record complaints. Thanks to their presence, the army is not using physical violence. Every day, morning and afternoon, Maxom Watch visits some 30 major checkpoints.
This is the only way they can go back home. When they come at 3, 4 o'clock afternoon, they have to go through whole procedure in order to go back home. They have it twice a day, this pleasure.
Palestinian workers build for the Israelis roads, offices, hotels, synagogues, and the notorious 700 kilometers separation, part wall, part fence, on the West Bank. The Israelis call their building a security fence. But security for whom? Definitely not for the population of the occupied Palestinian West Bank, and certainly not for the 10% of the Palestinian land that is separated by a wall from the rest of the West Bank. Despite the ruling of the International Court of Justice in 2004, which commands Israel to move the wall to their land, Israel carries on building. The wall around Jerusalem is completed, twice as high as the Berlin Wall. Palestinian East Jerusalem, the planned capital of a sovereign state of Palestine, is cut off from Palestinian territory. Also, in other ways, Israel insidiously strengthens its hold on the district, the heart of biblical Jerusalem.
This wall made the Israelis separated their families, the Palestinians' places, the villages, cities. Some places, the wall cut it 2 parts. Houses, cut it 2 parts.
Other than that, what is done all the time is Judaizing issues, which means building more and more settlements, building settlements in strategic points that will make sure that the Palestinians won't be able to build a capital.
The Judaization of East Jerusalem takes place at the expense of 250,000 Palestinian residents. They don't have full civil rights. Their ID card states resident of Jerusalem. And even that status they may lose.
Ik ben Palestijns, ik ben hier geboren in Jeruzalem. En ik heb een ID-kaart gekregen toen ik 16 was. Maar toen ik een Nederlandse paspoort gekregen heb, hebben ze de ID-kaart van mij afgepikt. En ik krijg het niet meer terug. En ze hebben de verzekering van mij afgepakt. Alles. Ik werk hier wel, maar ik werk zonder verzekering. Het is heilige land wel en ik ben trots op, maar de mensen hier zijn niet normaal. Het is niet te leven in deze land. Het spijt me om dat te zeggen, omdat ik hier geboren ben, maar ik vind het een beetje niet normaal.
Shift is closed because we don't know the future. We hope something's good happen to change this situation. We need justice. We need justice. The Arab did not harm anybody, and we did not like anybody to harm us. I want to live in my house with peace.
This is not the country I want to live in. Not this system, not this mentality. The land is mine. I was born in this land. I lived in this land. I love this land. But the country is not mine. I only have a green card to live in here. And before you know it, if they go for a Jewish state, I'm out of here. He's out of here. He's out of here.
How did it come to this? In the 19th century, amongst Jews in Europe, the Zionist movement developed, which seeks to own land on the site of the ancient Israelite kingdoms, in other words, in Palestine. The Zionists find support for their aim among the British, then an unassailable superpower. In 1917, they confirmed their support in a famous document, the Balfour Declaration, named after the British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object. The declaration says more, but in contrast to the first sentence, this addition would appear meaningless. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. The population of Palestine follows these developments with suspicion. Earlier, the British had promised the Arabs independence in Palestine and much of the Middle East. That promise goes up in smoke when, in 1920, the British get authority over Palestine and more Jews establish themselves under their rule. Bloody clashes between Jews and Palestinians, a Palestinian uprising against the British, are the result. The colonial rulers decide to curtail Jewish immigration, but that results in opposition and attacks by the Zionists. A devastating attack destroys the British headquarters, the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Under fire from two sides, the British passed control of Palestine on to the United Nations in 1947.
The United Kingdom is too deeply involved in the past history of Palestine to be called upon to shoulder any further commitments.
The Balfour Declaration and a strong Zionist lobby, but also the horrors of the Holocaust, are the basis of the UN decision to partition Palestine.
The resolution of the DUC Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstentions.
The decision provides for the establishment of a Jewish and an Arab state, but on a remarkable scale. The Jews, who constituted 1/3 of the population, receive most of Palestine. The Palestinian majority, the smallest part. The Palestinians reject the plan, a decision used against them to this day.
Who in the world is the United Nations to give out and slice out countries? But who thought this was going to work? In fact, all the way, even today, people say, you know, it's the Palestinians' fault. This whole conflict is the Palestinian fault because they refused the partition plan. Would anybody in their shoes not refuse it? Not that they were even asked. It's not like the Palestinians were asked and they said no. But I mean, who would accept such an absurd idea that a foreign power would take your country, take a larger portion, and give it to a small community of immigrants who really almost just came off the boat?
The UN decision leads to an escalation of violence. The Jewish forces go on the offensive. Terrorist organizations commit brutal attacks. In the Palestinian village of Deir Yassin, the people are killed after the village surrendered. Elsewhere, the Palestinian population is expelled by force. The atrocities have the desired effect. In a spiral of expulsion and flight, Palestinians leave their villages and towns en masse. It's a pitch-black page in the history of Israel, which is still not faced up to 67 years later. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion calls the sovereign Jewish state of Israel into being. It is a state without fixed borders.
Today, the British mandate over the land of Israel ends. We declare a Jewish state in the ancient land of Israel. It will be called the State of Israel.
Troops from neighboring Arab countries join the battle and prevent that more Palestinians are driven from their homes. In 1949, a deal is done. Israel now controls 78% of the former British Palestine, 22% more than anticipated in the UN decision, including the western part of Jerusalem, the city that, according to the UN resolution, would come under international administration. Palestinians call the events of 1947 and 1948 the Nakba, the catastrophe. Their society is completely disrupted, and the vast majority of the population possesses only what they could hastily take with them on the run. The UN recognizes the refugees' right of return, but to this day nothing has come of it. Israel would have none of it. In 1967, the Nakba is continued. In the Six-Day War, Israel takes the remaining 22% of Palestine. Since then, the Palestinians in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem are living under a fierce military occupation. They helplessly see one illegal Jewish settlement after the other rising in their midst. 650,000 settlers now live in Palestinian territory, protected by the Israeli army. Eldad Kish goes with a team of Israeli-Palestinian doctors and nurses to a village in the West Bank to provide medical assistance.
Onze organisatie, het deel waar ik in actief ben, is dus vooral om de grens over te gaan. Dat gebeurt meestal op onze vrije dag, dat is de zaterdag. En wij ontmoeten daar dan soms honderden patiënten die, ik zou willen zeggen, willen genieten van de hoge graad van medische zorg die er in Israël heerst. Ik wil daarmee niet zeggen dat er geen medische zorg op de westelijke oever is. Dat zou niet juist zijn. Maar Israël is toch een modern land wat dat betreft. En wij kunnen misschien nog wat extra bieden aan de mensen. Een van de redenen dat ik hier zit is dat het niet helemaal eerlijk lijkt dat 10 kilometer van mijn huis er medische hulp wordt geboden die ver achter staat bij wat gebruikelijk is in de westerse wereld.
There are many problems in Palestinian medicine. Part of it is due to the occupation. Villages are cut off from the outside world by the Israeli army. And there is a curfew in force, so that drugs are often literally unreachable. And then, of course, there are the checkpoints that you must go through to get to a pharmacy or a doctor.
Een van de redenen dat ik hier ben, die ik nog niet genoemd heb, is niet medisch, maar puur humanitair. Ik ben altijd blij als er ouders zijn, moeders met veel kinderen, en dat is hier gebruikelijk, om die kinderen te laten zien dat er ook nog andere Israëli's zijn. De enige soort Israëli's die zij kennen zijn Israëli's in uniform, soldaten met geweren. En ze hebben eigenlijk nog nooit meegemaakt dat er gewone burgers, gewone mensen, gewoon kunnen spreken. En dit belangrijke punt te vertonen aan de Arabische bevolking op de westelijke oever.
طبعا عملتهم في مسجد القدام اعطيهم لمحه عن جيوس جدار الضم والتوسع الجدار العنصري يبدو بكوخه كثير يعني اليوم
Dit krijgen we elke keer klachten van de burgemeester dat de afscheidingsmuur de bevolking scheidt van hun landerijen en ook hun bron van water is nu aan de andere kant van de muur. En zij moeten nu water pompen van een naburig dorp. Dus dit is altijd een mooie gelegenheid om enkele klachten te uiten tegen de Israëlische autoriteiten.
Ça se fait pas, je m'en fous. Cette chanson que j'écris, mal assis ou bien debout, ça se fait pas.
Focal point of the conflict, as the Israeli domination of the Palestinians is called in a misleading way, is Jerusalem, the holy city. Here is the famous Wailing Wall, where Jews mourned the destruction of their temple by the Romans in the year 70. The wall is a remnant of the outer wall of the Second Temple. There is a section for men and a section for women. In holes and crevices in the wall, they leave notes with messages for God. Here is Mount Zion, from which Zionism takes its name. And the city is of course the heart of the promised land that God, according to the Old Testament, destined to Abraham and his descendants. The biblical mythology is frequently used to legitimize Jewish claims on Palestinian land.
De schepper van deze wereld, de eigenaar van deze wereld, heeft besloten dat dat stuk land aan het Joodse volk behoort.
Because the land was promised to the Jewish people, some people take it to a place of only the Jewish people, an exclusive Jewish state, and that's where it becomes problematic.
Het is een cadeau van God. Dus dan ga je niet zeggen van oké, leuk je cadeautje, bedankt, nou ga ik even ergens anders naartoe. Ja, dan waardeer je het cadeau niet genoeg. Dus We zijn hier, we blijven hier, we leven hier en we gaan hier op vakantie.
But Jerusalem is not only sacred to the Jews. Above the Wailing Wall sits the radiant Dome of the Rock. This majestic edifice dominates the current city and is one of its distinctive symbols. The Dome of the Rock was built on the spot where Muhammad rose to heaven on his white horse. Here is also the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Under the Black Dome, Muslims pray 5 times a day. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are amongst the holiest sites of Islam. Only Mecca and Medina are holier. According to tradition, Jesus Christ's last walk was in the Via Dolorosa. There is no historical evidence, yet Bible tourists walk the Via Dolorosa and follow the Stations of the Cross of Christ to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. From a moral standpoint, one can understand that after the Holocaust, the Jews have been granted the right to their own state. It suited America and Europe to send Jewish survivors to the Middle East rather than absorbing them. This country was founded to protect Jews. But safety is not preserved with the occupation and colonization of Palestinian land and the suppression of the population, even if that suppression is suffused with a biblical source.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Resistance, attacks, and Qassam rockets are proof. The fundamentalist Hamas movement is a product of Israel, of the implacable Israel. Israelis create their own ghettos and entrench themselves behind walls and fences that mark their biblical land. The suppression of 4 million people is hopeless and untenable. Meanwhile, Israeli morale gets lost. Israelis undermine their own values. It's not the first time that ideals lose their luster in the light of reality. To begin, you must be willing to see that reality. We visit a bookstore, a disconcerting visit. No Arabic books, only very old history books of Israel, continued into the 20th century with familiar themes: Zionism, war, Holocaust, independence, and disputes between neighbors. The feeling of being victimized is strong in the Jewish community. There is always the thought of us against the rest of the world. Everyone wants to murder us. But how long can you maintain that you're the victim?
Everything you see around you, what have you, it's not the whole truth, just part of the truth. Because the rest of the truth, we adjusted according to our suiting culture, thoughts, beliefs, and conviction. And in the court of law, there's something called the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We don't have it. He says it's a contradiction that the people of Israel, the Jewish people, were killed, were murdered, were gathered like sheep in another country, and they were victims, and they came here and they did that to the other people, and we have nothing to do with that. This is the reality, he's saying. You know, with my respect and love to the Jewish people, and that's no problem. But when it comes to Judaism, translate to Zionism, this is scary, because your Zionism
is ignoring his right and his right and your right and your right. You know? Be a Jew, be a Muslim, be a Christian, that's fine and dandy. But don't be extremist. Any extremist is wrong. You know? So not because it carried by the Jews. No. Enough is enough. I don't think God is real estate broker. You take this one, you take that one. If you get outside of the global and look at the earth, it's only like this. We should get along. We should respect each other and leave God alone. Just take care of each other. Just leave God alone. Let him sit down there and what have you. And remember, God is million or trillion times, he's thinking better than us. And it's naive to think that God think our way. That's it.
In one hand, a cross. In the other, a bottle of beer. Tourists come to the holy city in abundance. By the busload. Most of them are Bible tourists. Sellers of religious trinkets are doing good business. Jewish and American groups are accompanied by armed guards. Palestinian children with their water gun must be careful not to be mistaken for terrorists. It wouldn't be the first time. What does it do to children, generation after generation, to grow up under occupation and oppression? We ask an institute that deals with this question.
Hoe kijken jongeren nou naar de toekomst toe van Palestina? Nou, ik moet zeggen, een deel daarvan die denkt daar helemaal niks van. Die gelooft niet dat er in de komende jaren een oplossing is voor het Palestijns-Israëlisch conflict. Die willen eigenlijk zo snel mogelijk het land verlaten als het kan. Tegelijkertijd zijn er ook veel mensen die uit liefde voor het land, uit liefde voor de samenleving hier, dat ze hier willen blijven. We geloven eigenlijk, gegeven dat het toch niet direct een oplossing op korte termijn is, dat juist dat versterken van de samenleving en het versterken van de mentaliteit van jongeren, dat onze bijdrage is voor uiteindelijk voor een toekomst van Palestina.
There are not only many tourists, but also many soldiers in the streets of Jerusalem. It seems like all young Israelis are in the military.
10 seconds for one picture.
From the age of 18, women must serve 2 years and men 3 years in the most moral army in the world, as the Israelis like to call their army. But it is this army that shapes the oppression of the Palestinians by force. It destroys homes and farmland, destroys aid projects, and mistreats civilians, arrests and taunts. Fortunately, there are young people who reject all this and refuse army service, even if the price to pay is going to prison and being discriminated against.
Israel is a very militarized society, and everyone goes to the army, and it's something that's very common, and people who don't go are treated either as traitors or parasites to society. So obviously refusers are treated the same, and in many ways, although legally there's not supposed to be any discrimination, but on a social level there's much discrimination if it's employers that wouldn't choose someone who didn't go to the army over someone who did, or if it's just people who ask you how old you are and you say 18, why are you not in the army, and then you have to start explaining, and it becomes this whole conversation many times in very high tones. So this is something that we as refusers are very much used to.
And the ambulances were going in convoys in order to be safer. And in each ambulance there would be 3, 4, 5 children lying upon each other, elders. I've never seen so many kids being injured and killed. I think we have 4, 5, 6 without heads, shot apart by the Israeli bombardment.
Partly because of the exorbitant violence in Gaza, the Western attitude towards Israel is changing. The Israeli sabotage of 9 months of negotiations initiated by the US Secretary of State John Kerry also contributed to it. More and more Western politicians are fed up with the hardline Israeli-Palestinian politics.
Good afternoon. Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
In the United States, Obama is solving one lingering question after another. But on the issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he knows he is caught by the predominantly Republican Congress that is on the side of Israeli hardliners like Benjamin Netanyahu.
There is no way of having security if we do not also have a Palestinian state.
In the European Union, they realize that they can no longer remain passive. The European Parliament expressed in principle recognition of a Palestinian state, an important political signal. Many parliaments of EU member states did the same. The Swedish and Irish governments went one step further with the recognition of an independent Palestine. The Palestinians, in turn, after the failure of the Kerry Initiative, embarked on a new path. They joined the International Criminal Court and seek to enforce an independent state through the UN Security Council. Their main demand is the coming to an end, within a few years, of the Israeli occupation and colonization of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the lifting of the siege of Gaza. On the West Bank and East Jerusalem, the colonization of Palestinian land continues at a rapid pace, despite all international condemnation. Many Israelis seem to find it all perfectly normal. They only protect themselves. They have to, because God has promised them the land. But what about the Palestinians? Don't they have a right to safety? Or freedom? A dignified existence? To their own state? The Israeli answer is no. Israel has dug in, literally behind walls and fences, and figuratively in their own right. It has shielded itself from the Palestinians, and in many ways from the world. It is less interested than ever in peace. Fortunately, there are Israelis who want it otherwise. They offer a glimmer of hope in an almost hopeless situation.
الحضور الكريم، ومن خلال هذه المنصة نوجه الدعوة باسم إدارة المهرجان للجمهور الكريم ومحبي الأفلام التسجيلية من جميع الفئات والأعمار لحضور فعاليات المهرجان الذي بدأ اليوم ويستمر حتى 29 من نوفمبر. طبعا العرض سيتم في 5 قاعات، هي الوسيل 2 3 و4 وأيضا المختصر 1 و2. بعد الاستراحة تبدأ عروض المهرجان بعرض فيلم سوناكالي، وهو رحلة الإرادة، قصة حلم وطموح ومثابرة. يتحدث الفيلم عن إرادة الإنسان الصادقة التي تصل إلى غايتها رغم كل الظروف وتخترق الحواجز. الفيلم يحكي مسيرة فريق كرة قدم نسوي في نيبال وشغف فتاة ساعدها حماسها في مطاردة حلمها نحو بطولة وطنية. الفيلم سوناكالي من إخراج بوجراج بات. إذن سوناكالي هو العرض الأول، الفيلم الأول. نترككم الآن مع الاستراحة.